especially considering that the project had been approved at a set number, and once we actually got the design numbers for it, it was much, much higher. So then the choice had to be, which one would we like? Both entrances, there's energy inefficiencies. However, this entrance, while having a vestibule underneath the director's office would improve energy efficiency there, we still have energy inefficiency at the children's entrance, which is used much more, as Todd mentioned. Plus, we have the safety issue that it addresses, plus the accessibility issue that it addresses. This entrance, as Todd alluded to also, is truly meant more as a delivery entrance. And if we did put a vestibule here, and these are my thoughts when I first saw this project, it is opening it up as more of like welcoming as an entrance. And it would take, I would be more comfortable doing more long-term planning to then, I hesitate to use the word remodel, but we'd have to take a look at this because people would enter the library through this and truly not know where to go. While that's part of the library, it's not offering many of our services. We could put up signage, they could be led over there. Honestly, it felt like that was something we should address at a later date. Our priorities right now is at least to get one vestibule and to redo this to handle those energy inefficiencies, plus that upstairs entrance being used more often by the families and the accessibility issues. We decided to go with that one vestibule versus the two vestibules.
Brian, just to revisit what I thought part of your question was, I don't recall conversations specifically about insulation issues around the office or underneath the office. Our conversations were focused on the glass and doorway here. Okay. So
Thanks.
That's the way I remember it. Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, I just have one question, which I know, frankly, probably any one of you can answer, which is, given that we do have a security concern as it relates to it being a children's area, can we be assured that either in the design or in other investments that the library will make that a security camera will be part of that redesign, so that and we were kind of unclear when I talked to Ryan about it earlier as to whether there is a camera there and whether or not it's operational.
Yeah, so when we look at the cameras, and I believe one of the projects will be upgrading the library's cameras because they are nearing their lifespan.
Okay.
They'll be improved, and we can look at adding more cameras, especially in that area, to follow the angles that this building kind of produces. I believe the angle for that entrance is kind of farther back looking at the entrance, but preferably if we could at least one more angle from the side looking down, we definitely would be adding that to address any security concerns. And I do recall at our last city council meeting the security really being discussed, and I did say, and I still plan to look at all options for security, cameras being one of them, but also looking at staff scheduling and any other anything else that we can add to improve safety in that area.
Thank you. Okay, we have one more person who's registered to speak, Julie Burns, who would like to speak on the bike and ped safety study. And if you could state your name and address.
Yes, Julie Burns, and I live at 6103 Winnequa Road. I'm here, and I want to register in favor of Amendment 1806. That would be funding for the pedestrian and bicycle safety studies. I'm here because of my concern and my fellow neighbors' concerns regarding safety of our families and children who are trying to walk, run, bike, and catch the school bus on Winnequa Road. Speeding vehicles and a high-traffic road without sidewalks are putting our families and the community at risk of extreme injury or death. In particular, I'm talking about the stretch of road between Bridge Road and Maywood. Even though the speed limit is 25 miles per hour, vehicles appear to be going 30 to 40 miles per hour, and drivers are distracted, talking on the phone, looking at their devices, eating food, doing makeup, etc. I have 2 young children, ages 2 and 5, and one wrong step and they could be gone forever. This terrifies me. Neighbors report that they don't feel comfortable letting their older kids bike to school or even walk across the street or along the street to go to our local parks. My 5-year-old son, who is in kindergarten, catches the school bus across the street from us at Greenwood and Winnequa at 7:30 in the morning. This is a high traffic time. At the crosswalk, cars do not slow down to stop for us, but rather go by speeding. At the bus stop, we pedestrians have nowhere to wait but on the raised red traffic calming path. Bicyclists are often upset with us as they either speed by us on the path, putting both of us and them in danger, or they now have to go onto the road, which puts them in danger with vehicle traffic. So once again, I'm here to support funding for pedestrian bicycle safety studies in Monona. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll declare the appearance section closed. There's no public hearing tonight. Next item is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are going to take things slightly out of order tonight. We're moving up one item from new business. Item 2A, consideration of Resolution 17-10-2221, authorizing the issuance of $4,160,000 in general obligation promissory notes and the issuance and sale of $4,160,000 taxable note anticipation notes in anticipation thereof. This is put forth by the finance director. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
Move to take this item out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second? Anyone?
Second.
Jennifer, okay. Mark?
Yes, Kevin will be coming up here to talk about the rates. So last time we had a resolution to start negotiating in the bond market for our rates. Basically, we have two things going on here. The $4,160,000 is related to borrowing need for Riverfront, which we've been approved all these projects, demolition, sewer replacement, some other costs associated with it. So we had to borrow that. We had to borrow that with capitalized interest because right now we have nothing. We have no increment coming in TIF 9. When we start these TIFs, it usually takes a while before the increment comes in. So there's cap interest in there, and we were refinancing a TIF 4 loan, which was a taxable note. They had to be taxable because it's when you deal with developers agreements or anything dealing with the private financing, it's required to do taxable. At the time, I believe the taxable rates were refinancing roughly around 5.5%. So right now we're taking advantage of the market and refinancing that to give us some savings on interest costs. So Kevin's went out today to the bond market and got the results and
thanks, Mark.
Talk about it.
Yeah, and one other thing that I think is worth noting is that I know Jeff Belanger, when he was here, I believe at your last meeting, went over your credit rating and talked about some of the pieces of information that go into that rating process. As a result of this bond issue, you did go to Standard & Poor's to get your rating updated. This borrowing is a note anticipation note, so it does not count against your general obligation debt authority. And as a result, like a revenue bond, it gets a rating that is one notch below your standard municipal rating. Your rating was reaffirmed. Your GO rating was reaffirmed at a AA+, which is a terrific rating. And these note anticipation notes were affirmed at a AA rating, which is one notch below that. So I do have copies of that rating report if you'd like to see it, given that Jeff had just discussed it recently. I'll just pass them out if you'd like them. As Mark mentioned, we were in the market today with that $4,160,000 note anticipation note. I'm happy to report that the net interest cost came in at 3.25%. And as Mark had alluded to before, one of the purposes of this is to refinance some existing taxable debt that's outstanding at 5.5%. So certainly that interest rate is below that. Additionally, we wanted to make sure that this rate reflected where the market was at. There was a Green Bay Metro sewage revenue bond that was issued in the same form, taxable. There aren't a lot of taxable issues in the municipal marketplace, but the spread to our loan in that last maturity compared to the spread to the taxable market in their loan was almost identical, which is an indication to us that the market was efficient. I guess those are the two things that I'd like to mention with regard to the note, in addition to what Mark had. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Anyone? No questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Mayor,
I'm
O'Connor, we need a roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. Will Clerk, please call the roll.
Alder Court,
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Spade.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Kitzler.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now, we will move back to regular order, under item G1, under unfinished business. Consideration of Resolution 17-10-2217, approving the 2018-2022 capital improvements program and 2018 capital borrowing.
I'll move approval.
Second?
Okay, we have several amendments here. The first one, Amendment 18-01, is Library HVAC Amendment. Alder Kitzler.
Yeah, so this is, if you remember, a while back, we had a much larger number. We had a second estimate that brought it down to $195,000. And you can see kind of the description underneath. I guess we talked a little bit more in depth last meeting. If there's questions, I'm happy to, or Ryan's happy to take them.
And Brad is here as well, if anyone
Yeah,
has further
sorry.
questions. Any questions?
I'll move approval of this amendment.
I'll second
Second.
that approval.
Okay, any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Amendment 18-02, is there a motion to approve this amendment? This is for the ambulance replacement.
Actually, well, you want a motion on the floor so we can talk about it briefly, or basically, let me just say, my main concern in making this particular amendment was to lower the overall borrowing capital spending for 2018. And in light of the amendment that we just adopted, which is almost the same amount, I don't think it's necessary to go forward with this amendment. I see Alderman Spate shaking his head.
State you agree.
That if I think it could wait another year. I think, if we leave it in this year's budget, by the time we actually take delivery, it'll be a little bit less than 6 years old, which, as I understand it, is the target. If we put it in 2019s, it'll be, the current primary ambulance would be over 6.5 years old. So, to me, it's within the range of acceptability either way. But I'm willing to not go forward with this amendment at this time.
Okay, Joan, do we need to vote on that or anything, or can he just withdraw it?
I think it can be just.
I'll just withdraw the motion.
Unless anybody else wants to bring it up.
Right.
Okay. And Alder Spate, you're in agreement with that?
I am.
All right, we'll withdraw that motion. Amendment 18-03, this is regarding senior center exercise equipment. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Is there a second? Jennifer. Alder Wood.
Well, I think Diane did a good job of explaining what this is for last time. I don't know if anybody has any questions about it. It's essentially replacing and upgrading some of the equipment, the weights, and in particular, I think the cart to haul the equipment, to move the equipment around in.
Holmquist?
I had one follow-up and to answer. And it had to do with regarding the shared space with parks and if any of these materials were materials that are already available through parks that we do or don't need to purchase.
Would you like to come up and...
So basically, all the fitness equipment that we have in the community center is shared. And I don't know of any instance when Jake is having an exercise class that needs them at the same time as us. So, yeah, we keep them up in the lounge where he does all of his exercise classes, so they are available. Yeah.
But there's no current equipment up there that are already purchased and sitting there idle
No,
for different...
what's up there is shared.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 18-04. This is the Ahuska Park Tennis Court renovation. Is there a motion to approve adjusting the
Move approval.
Second.
second? Any discussion? Alder Wood? You want to-
Well, as it says, this is basically more in the manner of a technical amendment that the request form had indicated 150,000 when it should have said 175. And as you'll note, the total was 200,000, but that included the Ahuska Park Master Plan, which is the next amendment.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Amendment 18-05, this is the Ahuska Park Tennis Court renovation. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Alder Wood.
This is, as it says, to delay the Ahuska Park Master Plan to 2019. Basically, because we have a lot of major parks projects stacking up in the future capital year's budgets. And I think we need to begin starting to sort of spread those out over beyond 2020. They're currently now bunched up in 2019 and 2020. And so this is a step in that direction.
Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Amendment 18-06, the Traffic Engineering Pedestrian Bicycle Study Plan. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Alder Wood.
So you should have received by email today, I think, from Leah, an updated capital improvements request form prepared by Dan Stefani. Dan and I and Josh Straka from Strand met last week to go over, sort of flesh out what this plan, what we would get for the $40,000. And this is what we came up with. I don't know if Dan has anything he wants to add or if people have questions for him.
There were actually two request forms sent in that email. The other helped flesh out the initial Winnicott Road Design Review plan.
And
These are sort of, we discussed how these were tied together last time.
Clarified that I think that one will focus on South Winnicott Road from Bridge to Maywood Park and also as a stretch from Outlook Street to Waterman Way, sort of up by Schluter Beach Park.
Mr. Stefani?
I think when we discussed this, we preferred to keep them separate so one task wouldn't get lost with the other task. If they're both lumped into the Winnicott Road Design Review or vice versa, I think the thought was that we would lose sight of one project over the other. So as Alderman Wood stated, the Winnicott Road Design Review would focus on the southern portion of Winnicott Road and then the Outlook Street to Waterman Way area, specifically in that curved area by Schluter Park. The pedestrian and bicycle study plan, we have 5 key bullet points there that would be looked at as part of that study, and then a final plan would be turned into the Public Works Committee and City Council at the end of that. So,
Any questions?
I just want to say, thanks for providing this information. My questioning last time we talked about it was only just to make sure that we had a clear path forward with both the committees and that there wasn't some sort of confusion and overlap. So, no, I appreciate the additional information and I'm fully supportive of it.
I think it was definitely useful to get together with Dan and Josh from from Strand, and I appreciate him coming in to do that as well, so that we were clarified what we're getting here.
Okay, anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 18-07. This relates to the City Hall air conditioner. Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion. Second.
Alder Spate?
Well, this is a fairly straightforward project. I don't think there's really much that needs to be said. It makes sense to replace the unit at this time, and so we think it's the prudent thing to do.
Any questions?
Just one.
Alder Wood?
This is the air conditioner that was running last winter, right? But you can just,
If you'd like.
Well, this is the second unit. There are 2 units up there. One was running.
oh, okay.
Since we're going to get a crane to lift one up there, and the other's at the end of its useful life, we might as well do the second.
Right. That's correct.
And the library at the same time, I think.
Yep.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Amendment 18-08, contingency fund for capital items for the media department. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Is there a Second. Alderman Kerr.
This is just a request based on the changes that were proposed for our budget to fund this room, sort of as a insurance for if we lose some equipment, we've got something to work with and don't have to come to the council.
And is this actually coming out of the fund balance?
This will not.
Or this is borrowing, right?
No, it will be coming out of the franchise fees.
Okay.
Remember during the operating, there was a gap, and it's basically the $3,000 gap. The revenue was, expenses were $3,000 less, so this actually, so it won't come out of fund balance. It will come out of
Okay.
franchise fees.
Anything else, Alder Kerr? Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 18-09, relating to dispatch painting. Is there a
Move approval.
Second.
Alder Holmquist?
This was basically to take the money that was allocated to painting, shift it to building maintenance line item, which could be absorbed there.
Any questions? Alder Wood, did you have something?
Yeah, and just would ask the city administrator, can the building improvement fund absorb this project?
Yeah, mostly that account is for projects that come up through the year that are unanticipated, and so usually we have room in that account.
Okay, because I think it's a worthwhile project, so,
Yeah.
okay.
Any other questions?
I think the
Alderman
follow-up
Quist.
I would have is if there was a concern of this project going forward because there wasn't room in that, I would encourage to come back for an amendment at that time, because I agree. We're already moving all the council areas in the dispatch center, that like now's the time to paint.
Yeah.
So if that's a concern, I think we'd want to hear about it here to make sure it goes forward.
Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Amendment 18-10, related to the street tree survey. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll withdraw that amendment.
Withdraw that amendment. All right. Item 18-11, Amendment 18-11, the library vestibule. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move approval for discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion purposes.
Alder Holmquist?
Yeah, so it was helpful to have some additional information between the two committee of the wholes, and then tonight, and to gather some additional clarification on how this project has evolved over time and what pieces, how different pieces of the project were understood. I have a few questions that I still have that will help me kind of make a decision on how we move forward. one of these papers indicate that there was carryover of $20,000 from this year's capital budget. Is that correct, Mark?
Yes.
So is the 120,
That the carryover that's for this project is savings from the parking lot, the library parking lot. So and you're talking about the fund balance being used.
well, so if I go to the page 106 in the book, it's indicating that the total project cost is 120.
Correct.
And to note that 20,000 of that amount is carryover.
Oh, so it should say 60,000. So 60,000 other revenues is money from some of the 20,000 from there and 40,000 from the savings from the parking lot.
So 40 from the parking lot,
Yeah,
20 from the capital that was approved
Yeah.
last year for the study,
yeah. So it's 60
requiring another 60
of actual borrowing.
of actual borrowing.
Yes, to get to the 120.
So that helps clarify like where all these numbers are evolving from. Although I still have concerns about this entryway and particularly the office space above it and how much money we're spending now on new HVAC and paying for balancing to balance out how air moves through this building and trying to address that issue where we know there's a major concern. And I appreciate Ryan's mention of this entryway isn't any better. That was some of the reason we went around of why the staircase had, $250,000 spent on a staircase. Was a similar issue of if we had people kind of push in this door, we'd have the same problem that we had on the other end of the building. Given some of the additional information as well as where the money is coming from, I'm okay with drawing this amendment.
All right, thank you. Next up is Amendment 18-12, Monona wetland sign replacement. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alder Kitzler.
So a little bit of this is tied to the next amendment. One is a cost cut, one is adding funds to the capital budget. Is it okay if I just kind of talk about them a little bit together? I won't go into great detail about the other one, but the reasoning for proposing both?
I think it is okay, isn't it, John? Sure.
All right. So, so you can see $15,000 is for a beach boom system, and I'll get in greater detail, and of course you can see it in your packets as well. And so, in my mind, I propose both of these to cut the wetland sign replacement because I'd prefer to have the boom system at the beach because it would be used by more patrons. It would have larger scale cost savings than having a sign that signifies wetlands. I'm certainly not against a wetland sign, but priority-wise, I'd rather cut the wetland sign to be able to pay partial costs for the boom system. So that was kind of the reasoning behind proposing cutting this wetland sign.
We have the wetland sign.
The wetland sign is currently gone.
Totally gone.
There
right?
might be a frame still there, but it's been gone for at least maybe 6 months.
Okay. Alder Moore, did you have something to?
Yeah, I was just going to say, given the changes that we've already looked at, the amendments we've already looked at tonight, with several substantial decreases, and the fact that we just, for instance, learned that only $60,000 is borrowed for the library vestibule, I would be open to withdrawing this amendment. I don't know if Alder Kitzler would be open to that. It's still maintaining the $15,000 that we're looking for the boom, but it seems like the $7,000 is something that is now more possible, given the other realities that we've looked at tonight.
I'm fine with that. I guess the clarification I'd want to know from other council members is, would they want a cut in order to accept the additional funds? I know we're not talking, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, but if if there was somebody that would vote the other one down because of not having decreased funds elsewhere, I would like to vote on this. But does that make sense? I don't know if I'm articulating that in the clearest way. But
Alderwood, did you?
First of all, this has just been going way too smoothly, and everybody getting along too well. So,
I don't want to stop that.
You have to pay your money and take your chances and see how the next vote goes.
Yeah.
I just on the wetland sign. I was actually on the council in my first iteration in 1993 when we put the sign out there. So the sign lasted until a few months ago, so it's been up for a long, almost 25 years. And it just recognizes that it's a wetland conservancy that's in Monona. It's on the belt line, so 120,000 people a day see it. It does seem like a lot for a sign. I assume that's in part because it needs to be larger to be seen, from the highway, sort of like interstate highway signs have to have larger lettering and be bigger. But so there.
Alder Holmquist?
So the first question would be, Mark, do we have a running total?
What we cut so far? Yeah.
And why you're doing the math. The second had to do with the boom system. Is that at both of our beaches?
No, so that would only be at Schluter Beach at this point. So, long story short is Dane County parks, as you can see in your packet, have much more intricate systems, but they're allowing. While they reached out to us to see if we would want to do the simpler system of just a boom, which is essentially a curtain that stops green algae, blue-green algae from coming in to some extent, seaweed, dead fish like carp, different things like that. So this was with the idea that Schluter Beach has become vastly more popular and used. And we have a resident that goes every morning at 5 a.m. and rakes huge piles of muck. And so it was just seeing, essentially doing our research on that one beach to see if it would be worthwhile on our second beach. That isn't as, at least anecdotally, as used as much that I know of, at least. So.
And some of the reason has to do with the wave pattern at Schluter is much more aggressive than the wave pattern at Frostwood. And I'm curious if there is a difference in the simple versus the more complex system from Dane County's experience at the various parks. Is there an advantage of at Schluter you want to use this system because you got more aggressive waves where at Frostwood?
So wind patterns are the same for both systems. The complex system is essentially an irrigation system that filters the water, and so that would be vastly more expensive, maybe $100,000 or so. We actually didn't ask for an estimate for that one because we'd have to build a pump station and a lot of other things. So we went with this one knowing that this would help quite a bit with what we need. And I mean, we're pretty lucky in the Monona beaches so far that we haven't had a huge amount of blue-green algae compared to a lot of Madison beaches. That said, we are, even if this does pass, we're still going to do our due diligence to make sure that with the wave patterns and the currents, that the boom system would work, essentially. And so there is, there's always the caveat of if we find out it doesn't, Jake's not going to request that borrowing in March.
Yeah, I would just add to that. That there is, Dane County has done extensive research about what booms, not just the difference between the two systems, but those wave patterns and current patterns and where it works and where it didn't. And we're honestly not clear at this point where Schluter fits in that framework, but we will do that. That's the due diligence that we're talking about. We'll make sure that this is a very viable candidate before the surgery is undertaken.
Then,
should we go back to this other
sorry,
amendment first?
Yeah.
Since
We can just, I'll withdraw
then we can
it.
spend more time talking about you're going to withdraw it?
I can withdraw it if.
You agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Just one thing before, the savings so far was 167,000 that Brian asked about.
Okay, thank you. Our final amendment then is 18-13 for the beach boom system. Is there?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay.
So,
Alderman Kitzler and Moore.
sorry, the one thing I'll also add is, so this is a one-time fee of $15,000 to buy the whole equipment and the installation. And then there's going to be a reoccurring fee of $500 each year. And talking to Jake, he's able to absorb that in his parks budget because it'll save his employees some time. And also, so Dane County Parks will actually install it and then store it in the winter. So they're the ones that are actually taking the kind of the brunt of the labor, if you will. So
What is the 500? paid
500
for?
essentially is paying for them to store it, to install
for
it,
their labor,
and take it
okay.
out at the end.
Any other questions about it?
I have one.
Doug?
Does it require any maintenance during the year to keep it, to make it effective, or?
I mean, we're told there should be no maintenance essentially unless a sharp object cuts it,
Right.
of which case then we can give them a call, and I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a fee maybe for the materials and such, but we've been told essentially there should be no additional fees kind of on other sides.
There won't be any need to clean away material on the outside of it? Or does the Dane County Parks do
Supposedly
that too?
no. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it works if
Yeah.
everything's going up on the beach, but supposedly no.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it's definitely worth, it sounds like a worthy project and worth the effort to see, because that's always been a problem with that beach. It just, it's not very, hasn't been in the past anyway, very friendly place to use because of all the gunk on the beach, so.
Anything else, Alder Holmquist?
So given there's still some information to be gathered, is there a reason to approve it as part of the capital budget and not come back as a amendment after the work has been accomplished?
I mean, I think Mark probably can speak a little bit clearer on it, but in speaking with Jake, we would like it passed so that we can move forward, as quickly as they deem necessary, and they being the Dane County Parks. And then, as far as my assumption is that any of these could always be, lowered if necessary come March for the bidding process, so it doesn't affect our debt or our taxes or.
Right. A lot of times we'll, especially in the bigger projects, we'll wait till we get the bigger numbers in, and then we'll borrow from them because it could be up or down one way or the other. And then there was a couple other projects, we'll kind of wait and see if the numbers come in, but exactly we usually wait till March. So if a lot of this stuff has to be turned around by March, so we definitely I would echo what Andrew just said.
So the reason I asked that question is similar to the amendment that I had regarding the library vestibule system, of how conversations sometimes start at one level and something may happen that is perceived to be different later. And I would hate for that to happen. So for example, let's say this conversation happens and it's, well, we need actually these two other items, and we come back next year and there's another line item here. And so that would be my that's some of my reasoning of not necessarily supporting it tonight. I support the project and the program, but I would want us to go through those other steps to be committed, like this is what it costs and this is what we want to do. And we meet twice a month, that we can move extremely quick to make that happen. So that would be.
Brian, I would just say that the due diligence that we're talking about is not related to cost. I think we have a very firm figure from Dane County Parks in terms of what it would cost. I mean, unless we were going for the Cadillac version, which we definitely are not. The $15,000 as well as the $500 a year is a very solid figure. The due diligence more relates to whether or not this boom makes sense for this particular beach given the currents and wind direction. It's not the shape of the beach or the size of it or anything else that would impact cost.
Alderwood?
as Alder Moore explained, I don't think what Brian was raising applies here, but I think, as we saw with the library vestibule, it's probably a good lesson for all departments that if you bring in a project and it's way underestimated and it has to be delayed to the next year because of that, it just makes it a whole lot harder to get it approved the following year. So.
Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye, or nay. Yeah.
Motion passes. All right, that is the last amendment. So, Mark, do you have?
Yes. So the total adjustments made were 152,000. 155,000 is decreased to the general obligation side, and 3,000 increased to the cable to get to the decrease of 152,000. We started off at 5,889,910, ending at 5,737,910. So that would be your capital budget. General obligation portion is 200. I don't know if you need a breakdown for all that.
Just what is the general obligation, I
General
guess?
obligation portion is, so it's water, it's 2,757,110, and then the TIF portion is 2,550,000.
Can you say the general obligation?
The general obligation when we borrow will be 2,757,110.
So we added
So we
600,000
No.
to the general obligation, are you saying?
No, the general obligation is the,
Or unless I'm looking at the wrong, I thought what I had here was
Yeah.
2,165,000 to start,
That's all the amendments, I think, isn't it? No, okay, you're right. They'd all been approved.
but they didn't add up that much.
Yeah, if they had all been approved.
2.6.
Oh, that's if they'd all been, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go on the sheets, 2.6 plus the storm.
Okay, okay.
So we added 100,000.
So you decrease 155,000.
Cut.
So we started at 2.
Started at 2.6 plus the 310, so we started at the general obligation portion was 2,912,110 is what you started at. So you had the general obligation and the stormwater together, if you want to add, and the TIF gets added in there too.
Oh, okay.
But the non-TIF stuff is, so you had the general obligation and the storm to get to 2.912110, and then you minus 155,000 to get to the 2.757110.
Okay, Alderwood?
Question for Mark, and don't necessarily expect you to have the answer to this right now or tonight, but way back when we first started talking about the capital improvement program, we were looking at how much unused debt capacity we had, and I know that number, it changes as we get new or equalized assessed values. If you know what it would be based on this budget, that'd be great. If you don't, could you get us that
Yeah, I mean,
number and get us what the what percentage we're going to be at?
I can email that out tomorrow.
Okay.
The actual numbers and details. Because I do, I mean, I have that. So.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well,
Alder Spade?
I just want to clarify, I believe we're about 300,000 below what we were allowed to borrow, correct?
Allowed borrow?
Well, I had 5.9 written down, 5.937.
Our debt capacity was around, we had available $14 million. If you go to the,
Oh, right, yep, okay. No.
But that debt capacity, the 14-something that's in here, hasn't that changed, or is that still accurate?
That's, well, that 14 was a start, and minus what we've just
Right.
approved, so, yeah.
That's where the 5.9.
So it leaves it down to basically $9 million.
Anything else? Then there is a motion and a second to approve the capital budget. All in favor, say aye.
Is this-
We'll have a roll call vote.
Is it
Sorry.
possible for, I have a policy director related to it. I'm just wondering if the, if this is the appropriate time for it. Sorry, since I don't understand the process and it's never been explained to me yet, I just have something related, which relates to, doesn't relate to the dollar amounts, it relates to, specifically to the vehicles. I'd like to propose that the council request that first of all, that we go ahead and support April Little's, city administrator's purchase of the Ford Escape, but in the hybrid version, and that we request the staff also look at the other vehicles, specifically the Ford pickup that was requested by Public Works, and come back to us with a different figure to the point that we've just discussed here. I'm not suggesting that we change the budget at this point, but I think this city has repeatedly expressed a commitment to sustainability. Ford Motor Company, among others, has said that by 2018, 70% of their vehicles will be, employ a start-stop technology, which significantly changes the equation in terms of fuel economies. And I understand that the police department's already looked into that for their police vehicles, and the only figure that we have in the capital budget is related to going with a hybrid version for the city vehicle, the Escape. And it seems to me that the $23,000 that we've budgeted is probably adequate to cover that, given the trade-in value. So I'm not suggesting we change the budget, but I do think it's important for this body to support that purchase and to as opposed to a standard vehicle, to show our leadership in sustainability. And I'd like the Public Works Department to look into it for the truck that they're looking to purchase as well, since it appears that there are very solid options available. I just don't know when is the appropriate time to bring that up, or whether we need to bring it up before.
Alder Spade?
I just want to say that when Alder Moore contacted me yesterday about this, I was encouraging, and I do support her effort, and I let her know that I tried this, 9 years ago, and we had some good discussion. And I also, to back it up, Chief Ostranga spent some serious time trying to figure out how the police department might be able to be involved in this effort. But a lot has changed since then. Mm-hmm. And I know just from the car that I drive compared to the one that I bought 7 years ago, both of which are hybrids, the technology has gotten a lot better. I'm not looking to hamstring the police department with an unreasonable request, given the nature of their use of vehicles. But I think for every other city vehicle, it is appropriate that, because when we look at the cost of fuel compared to the cost of these engines, the math works out pretty nicely, and you end up with a less polluting vehicle, and you're using less fuel. So you're essentially investing in a technology to be less wasteful and more environmentally conscious. Having said that, I also would like to see, I would love to work with the police department and figure out if one of these Ford vehicles now that is rated to be, a a squad car, what that vehicle is like. And I don't know, Chief, if you've seen those vehicles, if they're part of the Wisconsin purchase program. It was a Ford.
It's called the Ford Interceptor.
The Interceptor.
Yeah.
But, here it is the night of the budget, and
Yeah.
so what I suggested was that, this is a policy matter that we can probably pursue because it takes a while for vehicles to be purchased. But hopefully if we can iron this out over the course of the next 10 months, the next time we have a city budget, there'll be more clarity on this particular issue, which is an important sustainability issue. And where it's practical to be buying these things, I think we should do it. And where it isn't, then we won't.
City Administrator Lou?
I've had several conversations both with Brad and Dan about this issue, and I think what I would suggest is we do take next year to really dig into the policy, because it seems where we left off in terms of at least a purchasing policy, we have a draft, but we never really completed that policy that would give us as staff guidance in terms of, yes, it may be a more expensive cost. In this case, it would be a $7,000 cost for the administration vehicle. Is there some guideline for like a percentage or a flat dollar amount of a standard versus, a more sustainable purchase? So just to guide us as a staff, I think, in council in making some of those decisions. I think there's some other considerations. For example, we tend to service our vehicles in-house, and do we have the capabilities with our one mechanic that we have to service the vehicles as different as they are? And we make a lot of our purchases through the state contract, and my understanding is the hybrid vehicle is not an option through the state contract, if I'm not mistaken. But those state contracts, I believe they update those every year. So that might be another thing that keeps changing as time goes on. So we could maybe get a better price on it. But if we have to buy something not on the state contract, that automatically increases that price. But, I think it's time to get that policy kind of finished up so we all have some better guidelines as to, I guess, a little more where that line should fall. I mean, is 7,000 too much? Is it not too much? Maybe one vehicle it's not, but a fleet, then it becomes significant.
Alder Spade?
Well, again, I just want to make the point that it's not a $7,000 actual cost to the city, because every time that you drive the extra 200 miles on a tank of gas, which is what I do, I'm not putting as much gas in my car, and thus I'm saving money because I fill up fewer times. But that math is something we can calculate. And when the city purchases vehicles, we should be doing that math, because the taxpayer is paying to put fuel in these vehicles just as much as they're paying to purchase them.
I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, the toolkit that we're looking at purchasing for sustainability has a calculator in it, so it would make those calculations easier for us to do. Right now, it's a little, very time consuming, and we're not sure if we're looking at the right parameters, but next year we should have that tool available to us in the toolkit, correct, Brad?
Life cycle cost calculator.
Yeah, I would just say, too, that while I certainly appreciate the state's purchasing and the savings received there, that it's pretty obvious to me that we cannot depend on the state or our federal government to be leading in this area, and that it really is going to take those of us at the local level to be speaking louder around issues of things like sustainability. And so all I was suggesting for tonight was I was hoping that given the $23,000 that's in this budget for this vehicle, this single vehicle, I was hoping that with the trade-in that we could get to the number that we need to be at to be able to purchase our first hybrid as a city and demonstrate our leadership in that way. So without a change to the budget in that regard, just...
Yeah, I don't see, I think we're talking about The vehicle on page 26.
Correct.
Replacing the Ford Escape, 2000. And also the vehicle on page 82, the pickup truck with plow replacement.
Right.
And, I mean, I don't see why we need to wait, why it would take us 10 months to figure out whether whether it makes sense to buy a hybrid versus a gas vehicle on each of those. And I guess what I would propose, and we'll move in a moment, is that we direct staff on those two vehicles to obtain the cost for the purchase of a gas and a hybrid vehicle in those cases. And, if we have the life cycle calculator by then, that would be great. I'm assuming there's not any great urgency to buy these vehicles. If there is, there's got to be other ways to figure out life cycle costs without, that specific software we're getting, and come back to us. And so it is a policy question. If it costs a little more upfront for the hybrid, we look at the life cycle cost and we make a decision then which one to buy. So I would, I'll make a motion that we direct staff on those two vehicles to obtain price quotes on both standard gas and hybrid vehicles.
So there'd be a footnote
Okay.
in the descriptions too.
Right, sure.
Right.
So it is.
We're kind of right in the middle of another motion.
That's why I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Well, this is a footnote to the budget, though.
Effectively, it's an
So it's-
amendment, it's treated as an amendment to
Okay.
the pending budget.
So you have to vote on it.
Correct.
Did
how
you
do we
want to make
approve
did you make a motion then?
Yeah.
Okay, and was there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
So my
Well, we got to do this
We're-
by,
We're going to be asked to approve a budget that then has a footnote to say, come back with more information. Why wouldn't we just pass the budget without the footnote?
It's because if we pass it without the footnote, it gets lost, and I think if we have the footnote in there, then it's documented as part of the adopted budget. And if it, as with almost any line item in here, any of these things there are many things that are going to come back over the next year with budget amendments,
Yeah.
either up or down. So,
I guess I'm just concerned about, it seems like it would have been cleaner outside of the budget if it was a direction around purchase of a vehicle, and this isn't the first time that we've heard about the purchase of the vehicle and of these two vehicles, and information that has been gathered to this point of why now to have it attached as a footnote to come back rather than the information being held without it. So it's similar to, well, we could have had a footnote for the any other item to say, well, come back with the real number later and we'll adjust the budget. That's the whole point of coming back at a later point.
but if we don't tell them tonight to look at getting a hybrid, then they're proposing to buy gas vehicles, and that's what will come. That's what will come back as a purchase request.
That's why I was, again, being the newbie, I don't know what the exact process is, but that's why I was suggesting it as a request of staff and a directive to staff as opposed to an amendment to the budget. But I will leave it to those of you that have been around the block far longer than I have
Yeah, I guess the reason I think if we take a vote on this, then staff know, if it fails, then it's like, okay, we don't have to do that. If it passes and they know council has said, look, pursue this seriously to the point of getting two different quotes for vehicles. So
Anyone
it may
else?
not be the best way to do it.
I think it gets your point across.
Yeah, so.
Chad?
I tried to tell Alder more politely in the email that if she wanted to be branded a troublemaker, she could bring this up during the budget. And she obviously was willing to take that. And
And it wouldn't be the first time.
I'm happy for you to take that mantle, because I've had it long enough. So,
I think everyone thinks it's probably a fine idea, it's just a question of the process.
So I would encourage that
But
the direction towards staff then may include more than just the purchase cost and fuel cost, but some of the other considerations around the purchase, given that we service in-house and the various other aspects.
yes.
Oh.
that
I
it-
got the actual price difference. It's
Yes, the
other-
price difference is here.
Yes.
That I would encourage the amendment and footnote to include those other details for us to be able to make.
Right,
the
basically, yeah,
decision.
we want it to be, a complete cost look.
Right.
Otherwise, it won't make sense because it's
Yeah.
right there.
Anything else? Joan, do you have all that?
The actual motion was by Alder Wood was direct staff to obtain price quotes on both standard gas and hybrid vehicles for the two vehicles in the budget.
And then I would add to include total life cycle and other costs, and other considerations.
Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Come on, right?
Chief Ostrenga.
Uh-oh.
Now you stirred up trouble.
Wait a
And the
second.
police department,
I'm
too.
writing this down. Wait.
And this is only
Total,
referring
I'm
to
sorry.
the Public Works and the
Yes, the two
administrative
vehicles
vehicle,
in
not
there.
the police.
What vehicles you're talking about?
Not
I
the
thought you were
police
gonna
vehicle.
volunteer to.
Oh.
We've had a hybrid since 2009.
Right.
Alder Wood, I need the rest of your motion
I'd
wording.
be delighted to
Sorry.
have the police department look into
To
hybrids
include
as
the
well.
total
I
life cycle,
heard that you already have.
total life cycle
Total life cycle,
costs
cost, and other considerations.
and other considerations. Do we know what those considerations are? I mean, is everybody clear on that?
Right.
Maintenance and repair. for-
Maintenance, repair,
Right.
okay.
Can I just say, because the chief was just up here, that my original directive was to include the police vehicles, but when I came in tonight, I came in early in part and was told that the police had already looked into the current hybrids on the market. That being said, the stop-start technology in police vehicles is noted to save upwards of $3,500 a year, simply because those vehicles, as we all know, spend a huge amount of their time idling. And just as another point, another data point, because this is something that I know a little bit about, you all know I do some business in Europe, and as of 2016, you cannot buy a car in the entire country, in the entire EU, without the stop-start technology. Not a single vehicle, any make, any model, without the stop technology. And so I know that this might seem like, out of the box, tree hugging, kind of to some people out there, but this is technology that the rest of the globe has already embraced, and I just think it's
already hugged.
Yeah, it's already hugging with good reason and with good results. So,
Okay. Is there a second to the amended motion? Chad,
yes,
do you agree with that?
I second the amended motion.
Okay. Anything else on the amended motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now we are back to voting on the budget, correct?
Okay, that needs a roll call.
All right.
Alder Moore,
aye.
Alder Kuhr,
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Spate,
Aye.
Alder Wood,
Aye.
Alder Kitzler.
The budget is in the books for now.
One budget.
One budget.
One down, one to go.
All right. Next item, G1B, consideration of ordinance 9-17-689, an ordinance to revise and consolidate, amend, supplement, and codify the general ordinances of the city of Monona, put forth by the city administrator. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move approval.
April?
Okay, I'll just repeat this since it's been about a month or so. A few things to note about this code adoption ordinance. It will approve and consolidate the revised code book into various new chapters and sections. It tells which ordinances were repealed, such as the smoking and cable television sections. All changes are listed in the extensive Schedule A and summarized in the 2017 recodification changes summary. The effective date is upon publication of an abbreviated adoption notice, and at that time, the E-code will go live on our website. And if you need some help navigating, there's some good webinars and some help pages. Otherwise, you can give our staff a call about that. At the end of the code book, you'll find a derivation table that will show you what happened to the old chapters in the old book and where they fall now into the new book. And there's one final thing. The Plan Commission needed to have a separate hearing, which is required by statutes because it's the zoning code. And there are some minor changes that they wanted to bring forward, which were in your resolution. And if you wish, these minor changes could be included in the final motion to approve. But either way, they won't appear in the pages in the code that are already out there. They will appear at a later time when they can be typeset by the codifiers. The other option is to approve these changes, and any other changes going forward would be done as a future amendment, just like we would do any other ordinance amendment, and that will appear as a code supplement, which we update once a year. That gives us new pages to the book and incorporates all of the ordinances into the online version. Otherwise, they just appear as separate ordinances. And I believe most of the changes that the Plan Commission suggested were minor. Sonia, I don't know if you have any comments on some of those changes from the Plan Commission, if you want to add anything to that.
If you'd like to summarize them.
Maybe if you wish.
Well, she's coming up. I have a question about something you just said. So the revisions to the website version get made once a year, or?
As soon as we pass the code, it gets loaded by our codifiers onto our website. It'll say new laws, and you'll see a list of all the ordinances as we adopt them. Once a year, then they make a supplement, which typesets all of those new laws into the main code book, and it's called a supplement. So next year we'll get supplement number 1. The following year we'll get supplement number 2. And then they'll disappear from the new laws because they're incorporated within the electronic document and as paper copies for the code book.
Okay, but the updates will appear on the website within a short time after they're adopted and effective.
Yeah, they'll appear very fast. So you'll always know. And when you search for things, say you want to search for dogs, it will pull up the new laws and the existing code. So that makes it really easy to find it either in the existing code or the newly adopted ordinances. So you don't have to worry, did I miss it and it's appearing in a new code? The search should grab that if we typeset it correctly.
Okay, thanks.
I have another question about that. So in the online version, though, is it incorporated into the part of the code it should be in, or is it a separate part of the online version?
It's a separate part.
Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So otherwise Will yell at me.
Yeah.
As you pass ordinances throughout the year, the day after publication, those are the law of the land in Monona. But the book isn't changed, and the code on the website isn't changed except for once a year. So what happens is, as you change these ordinances, on the website, there will be the section that is the standing code, and then there will be a section of new laws, which is what you've changed throughout the year. So if you have an issue and you really need to look at it, you look at the existing code, and then you also have to look at the new laws to see how that section may or may not have been changed as the year went by.
But we could do a search on an item and it would bring up both.
Correct.
Exactly. Sunny, did you want to talk a little bit about
So because this had to go back to Plan Commission one more time, they took the opportunity to go through it again with a fine tooth comb, and they found 5 things that they just wanted to tweak. The first was related, it's really minor, related to the earth station dish antenna section, and it was simply reordering a list of requirements so that it was clear as the first requirement in the list that the rest of the requirements did not apply to earth station dish antennas 2 feet in diameter or less. The second change is in the historic conservation section of the code. And what it is under the nomination, any person can nominate a property, a house, a commercial building, whatever it is, to become a City of Monona landmark property. And what the Plan Commission decided is that they wanted to require that the property owner's authorization for that nomination be included. So that was added. The third change was also in the Landmarks Commission ordinance, and it was in regards to when changes are proposed to a landmark property, the Landmarks Commission will review the characteristics of that building, and the text originally read, and also other landmarks nearby, and the intent of that is for if you have, for example, a historic district, you might look at the characteristics of multiple buildings in that district and how they contribute to the historic significance. And the Plan Commission at this time didn't feel comfortable requiring a landmark property to be compared to other landmarks nearby because Monona doesn't have any districts. So the word "or nearby" was struck in. The fourth change was just a process clarification so that when reading the code in the future, people weren't confused. This is a section requiring that the zoning administrator provide a public hearing notice 5 days prior to the Plan Commission meeting for zoning permit applications. We also have another process requirement that when you're applying to be heard before the Plan Commission, you need to submit your application 2 weeks prior. So they didn't want to confuse that 2-week application deadline with the 5-day zoning administrator mailing of public hearing notice requirement. And then the fifth change was in the access management guidelines. The title, when it was presented to them, just says access management guidelines. They added a second line of text reading for commercial and multifamily properties to clarify that the intent of regulating driveway widths and things was not to be applied to single family homes all over the city. It was just for the higher intensity uses on commercial and multifamily properties.
Any questions, Alder Wood?
Yeah. So on the second change, excuse me, adding a sentence on the nomination for landmarks, a sentence that basically requiring the property owner to sign authorizing the nomination. So that means if the property owner says, no, I'm not interested, I don't want it, then it couldn't be, that's the end.
That's correct.
Okay, and you should put your landmarks hat on for a moment.
Yes.
I mean, I know we've discussed, it's been a while since we discussed some of the changes, but this seems inconsistent with the with designating landmarks and preserving them in the city. Would you, if you have any comments?
Yeah, I think the Landmarks Commission would be very opposed to adding that language into this section. The idea is if a property is perceived as having community-wide value as a cultural resource, the person that owns that property might not be interested in preserving it, but the community as a whole thinks it's worthy of preservation. So in that case, if the property owner vetoed it, the community would lose that cultural resource opportunity for preservation. Also, it will kill the Landmarks Commission's ability to become a certified local government, which is something that they are looking at doing. And to become a certified local government, you have to meet certain criteria as identified by the Wisconsin Historical Society. And one of those things is having certain things in your ordinance. And one of them is that you may not require property owner authorization. If we become a certified local government, it opens us up to eligibility for $25,000 in grant funds annually and a lot of support from the Wisconsin Historical Society on projects the Landmarks Commission wants to pursue. So I think there are two options. You could take the Plan Commission's recommendation and require property owner authorization,
or you could, and in that case, I think if you kept that authorization requirement, the Landmarks Commission would come back in a month or so in short order and request a revision to that with more support.
If I could just follow up on that before you. Yeah, I agree that this one of the things that we have in mind once we get the certified local government status would be to obtain a grant to do a citywide, it's not a survey, a report, basically.
Architectural survey.
Architectural survey. That, otherwise we'd have to come to the council, I guess, and ask, see if we can put that in the capital budget. But, I think in the process, I would imagine, I'm sure that the Landmarks Commission would take into account the property owner's wishes, but to just outright give them an absolute veto, even setting aside the certified local government aspect of it, seems unwise to me. So I will move, I guess, later to have this change taken out, I guess.
Does the Plan Commission have the final say on Landmarks Commission?
It's part of the zoning code, and the Plan Commission has authority for recommending all of the changes on the zoning code. So they do have a say in it, but it's the council's ultimate authority and decision of whether to accept the Plan Commission's recommendation or ignore it or modify it.
In Alderwood, I assume the Landmarks Commission has not discussed this change?
No, we have not. We didn't meet last month or the month before, I guess. There's a draft, at least, that I had worked on to further update the landmarks ordinances, and I think part of that was clarifying where the jurisdiction between plan and landmarks commissions falls.
Alder Holmquist?
Yeah, so some of the background discussion at plan regarding this item had to do with, there was the discussion around nomination and what happens to the property owner's rights of someone, me saying, boy, I want to nominate your house, Chad, and Chad says, well, I'm not really interested in that. The value of my house may decrease now because it has certain restrictions on it. When we had that discussion and going around and connected with approval for additional status and items, we talked about in the current language that was there wasn't comfort moving forward without additional language being crafted regarding what would be the procedural steps of, in the scenario, if I say, Chad, I want to nominate your house and you're not interested in it, what are the procedural steps for Chad if we as a city think that it's an important thing to preserve and we want to do that? How is it that we as a city work that out with Chad? Rather than just
right.
do it.
I mean, we
without any
essentially talked
recourse.
about the whole issue of eminent domain, frankly, because if in fact, to use the example, Chad didn't want to have his house recognized that way, and in fact his property values did go down because of the landmark status, what was the city's responsibility then if they wanted to go ahead to ultimately remunerate him for the difference?
So the decision was made at that plan commission meeting to restrict the language now, with the idea of wanting to see language that came back that further clarified that aspect of eminent domain, for the lack of a better word.
Alderwood?
So, as I said, the Landmarks Commission is in the process of revising the ordinances, partly in order to qualify for the Certified Local Government Program, and does spell out and I haven't looked at that in a few months, but the draft spells out some of the procedures. So to me, this added, if the ordinance has already said this, I'd say fine, leave it in there until Landmarks brings this forward. I think to add this now when another committee is in the process of updating those ordinances doesn't make any sense. So I'm okay with, I don't think any of the others really would impact.
Did one of the other ones impact landmarks?
Yes, it was much more minor than that change and didn't hinge on certified local government status, as far as I know.
So I'd be okay with going forward with the rest of the changes, but to me, I mean, at a minimum, I'd say, we should get landmarks input before we make this kind of change. And I don't know, eminent domain, I don't think, making it a historic or landmark site would implicate eminent domain, but we have our eminent city attorney here to opine.
What you're talking about is what's referred to as a regulatory take.
Right.
When you don't take title to the property or ownership to the property, but you impose regulations that restrict the use of the property. To lawyers, it's called the Nolan and Dolan. There's 2 cases out of California that dealt with that. And without going through 2 hours of legal explanation, really, for there to be a regulatory taking, you have to impose such a restriction that it deprives the property owner of all reasonable use of the property. So it is possible for you all to impose restrictions on landmarks that do limit their use of the property, and it would not be a compensable regulatory taking. The kind of things, to my knowledge right now, there really are no restrictions in Monona's code to somebody that's designated as a landmark. Basically, is all it does is it highlights it to staff and then allows the city the option of pursuing eminent domain to acquire the property if you wanted to, but you have that right anyway. So it really doesn't, this would not impose any regulatory restriction on the property owner right now.
Two questions there. Well, one related to that. What you're saying is to go back to our example, if the city decided to make Chad's property a landmark, you're saying there are no restrictions currently in the code that would prevent Chad from doing anything he wanted to do with his property, regardless of its landmark status?
Chad would be able to do anything he wanted with his property that any other property owner with a non-landmark status could do. He could apply for a permit to demolish it, and that would flag it to the city staff, who could then, prior to granting that permit, take the matter to the city council. The city council could decide to initiate eminent domain and acquire the property in lieu of allowing Chad to demolish his house. But that would be a matter of effectively buying it from him involuntarily. If you chose not to do that, then yes, he'd have the right to do whatever he wanted to the property legally, to the same extent anybody else could.
What about remodels? Because we've had remodeled historic properties that have had to come to Plan Commission previously.
Right. There are, those things would go to plan just like any normal Plan Commission review. But there's, under your current code, at least the last time I looked, there was no additional restrictions imposed on landmarks, designated landmarks.
But individual property owners are not taking their house in front of the Plan Commission for a remodel.
Right
Only
now,
landmarks.
They're landmarks.
Landmarks are, but not any other.
I shouldn't speak out of turn, but I would question right now the authority of the Plan Commission to impose any restrictions on landmarks, on the renovations of landmarks right now. I mean, I can certainly look at this in detail, because I am sort of speaking out of turn here, but...
it no longer goes to Plan Commission under the ordinance that's in your packet right now. It goes to Landmarks Commission, and they make a determination as to the effect on the property, whether it would detrimentally change, destroy, or adversely affect the architectural features of the landmark. In the case of new construction, if it's in harmony. And then number 3, would the proposal significantly alter or destroy the historic characteristics? So they make a determination of those 3 things. They don't put a restriction on or tell them what materials to use or not. They just make a determination. And then from there, the city council chooses to acquire it if they want to enforce.
So no matter what landmarks may determine, it still boils down to the city either buys it through eminent domain, or the property owner can do as they wish with
And I guess I would, Brian, having sat through that conversation, I guess I would say that the committee's concern was that, A, that the property owner couldn't do anything that they wanted with it, and B, even if they could do anything they wanted, that just the designation alone could, be injurious to that property owner being able to sell it because the designation usually does come with strings attached or extra committees they have to go through or whatever if anything needs to be done with the property. The second thing I would say is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking that when we met as a committee at that time, we weren't sure if changing that would impact the application of landmarks. I could have sworn that night we weren't sure. Is that correct? Am I right in remembering that?
There would be time to come back with the additional items that I think, Doug, you're referencing of, there are some other pieces that were being revised, and this was, from that group, I think, intended to be a preventative measure in the in-between time.
Right.
To then see the additional language to come back, and I didn't see anybody at that group opposed to pursuing that status, but wanting a little bit more protections on what does this mean for an individual property owner, and how does it or does it not impact their value and future sale.
Right, and now it sounds like what we're hearing tonight, though, is that this would effectively stop the application in its tracks, because
It's
this
not
is definite.
Excuse me. It's not necessarily contradictory. It's if you do approve it with the Plan Commission's addition, we cannot be a certified local government. But it was passed in the interim by the Plan Commission with the understanding that you would have to come back and revise the ordinance, and that there are other revisions pending anyway.
Alderwood?
So this is the first time we've seen this language, right? So my thought would be we go ahead and adopt the rest of the codification and bring this back as a separate agenda item for a second reading.
Are you speaking of just the landmarks part or all 5 items?
Well, I think all of it. I mean, I don't know which procedurally makes more sense. I mean, I don't really have a problem with the rest of it. I assume that the purpose of doing it, sort of squeezing this in under the finish line, is so that it's in the first original codification.
If I can just address that, it's not a matter of squeezing it in. It's a matter of, in this recodification, part of the code is the zoning code. So by statute, it has to go to Plan Commission. There has to be a public hearing. Plan Commission then makes recommendation and input to the council. That was the process that they went to do this. So it wasn't that they were trying to pigeonhole things in. This is their report to you about recommendations they would make.
Right, and no, I'm talking about us being asked to vote on it tonight when we've never seen it before. But that is, the purpose is to get it in the first codification.
Yeah, it was more to comply with 6223, the statute. I think, to your point, what would accomplish it is you can certainly pass the recodification exclusive of the changes Plan Commission has reviewed. Because we've complied with the statute, we've gone to Plan Commission and gotten a recommendation. And then to your point, at a later meeting, you can separately address those, the 5 that Plan's recommended.
It was our understanding at the Plan Commission meeting night that the application was not in process right now, and that there would be sufficient time to see the revision language to be able to come back and make that adjustment. That was
this specific sentence we're talking about.
Yep. That
Well,
it
why
wasn't
add it? I mean,
that
I
it
don't
wouldn't
get-
prevent us from.
Why add that language, anticipating that we're going to look at the same paragraph in the near future and change it again?
Because there were some other revisions that were being generated at the landmarks group that the Plan Commission wanted to see those before taking out this recommendation for that signature of the nomination.
Okay.
They weren't opposed to moving forward, and there was no indication that this would prevent us from pursuing status, knowing that this would need to be changed to submit that application and be approved.
Yeah.
Just
Alder
trying to
Kitson?
represent that group in that night.
I don't know if I have to do an amendment or what, but I'm supportive of all the other changes of Plan Commission revisions, except for the landmarks. I mean, I share, I don't know if the committee's sentiment or just yours, Doug, but that's a large change that really stops them from pursuing something at this point, and it should just go through the, why make that large of a change now when they'll have to come back anyways? So that's just my viewpoint. So I don't know if you can make a motion to move this along or how this.
Well, as April explained this, there's two ways we can handle these changes from Plan Commission. Is that one of them? Could you explain those again?
We accept the recommendations that were listed in the resolution, or I suppose you could exclude one or more than one of them. Or you just choose not to accept the recommendations. The code book is adopted, and then just like any other ordinance amendment, it's a separate ordinance that you would do like we do anytime going forward. But the book is typeset, it's ready to load. I mean, it's too late to put the book out the door with language changes in it anyway.
Well, I have another question about language changes that wasn't included.
Can I just ask one more? So in order to accept the changes, do we need another, somebody to make a motion to handle these changes, right? Because right now, we just have a motion to approve the code book as it currently, the new code books that currently exist. So is this supposed to be handled as a separate motion, or is it part of this motion?
Somebody now could bring an amendment to the motion on the table.
Okay, so that's if Doug or Andrew wanted to do that, they could do that. And Andrew, did you have another question, first of all?
About the general ordinance, not this piece.
Okay.
So I'll wait until this gets.
Then I'll move to delete the sentence reading the nomination form shall include the property owner's signature authorizing the nomination.
Second.
Is there a second? Is there any further discussion on that? So we'd be including all the other changes
Right.
along with it. Okay? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
I'm sorry, was there 2 nays?
No, I'm an aye.
Okay.
I'm on the fence.
We're troublemaking tonight.
An aye.
Okay, so it is, passes
Yeah.
with 5-1
Yeah.
vote, okay. So we have a motion on the floor to approve the code book, correct?
Yes.
And we have a second. Is there any further discussion, Andrew?
Yeah, so a while back, I know there was discussion, and I emailed April and Mary about this, and so I was led to believe that there would be no smoking in parks ordinance added into this. I know there was discussion about it because it was in previous summaries, but it's not in this summary. And I know we've brought it up almost every time we've talked about the ordinances because there is discussion. I'm happy to go through about it, a different process.
When we looked at it, we decided that there was discussion, but nothing had ever been actually
Parks Board
changed
voted on it,
in
though.
the book. So I'm not sure.
And I don't know, Chad, you were on the
between
committee at the
there
point
and
too.
then,
I don't know
but
if you recollect
The final
that.
version of the book did not have those changes,
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Alder Spade, do you remember any of that?
Put you on the spot.
Right in the middle of my chocolate.
If you're candy, yeah.
Well, my recollection is that we wanted to clarify that issue in our ordinance. That our previous ordinance did not speak to the issue of smoking in parks, and that we were hoping to clarify that. Now, whether or not that clarification was going to be an outright ban is, I think, a worthy question. Like, I know, I can't speak for Alder Wood, but I know he and I have spoken about this, and I mean, I'm a little uncomfortable. I mean, when you're out in the open air, that's different than being in a closed public space. But when you're in a park shelter or when you're in a playground or something. You know, it's just like our ordinances with respect to having dogs and things like that. You know, it's a little more nuanced.
I think where it left off, now it's starting to come back to me, is there was park board discussion, it came here, I think there was a request for more information, Jake was going to get more information, and then it never came back, I think is where the trail ended. That's my recollection. I can only tell you what's in this book and
Go ahead.
the council saw, so.
Alderwood?
Yeah, so, yeah, my recollection is similar, I think, to Andy's, that I thought that there was that there was a smoking ban that, you know, in the recodified ordinance, but then when I asked about it, because I was intending to bring forward an attempt to take that, to modify that, we looked, and what it says is no smoking is allowed in parks where posted as prohibited. So I guess it's, which is not the greatest to me, because it sort of leaves so much discretion to the park director to, you know, either put up no signs or put up signs everywhere. But so when I saw that, I said, well, it's not a complete ban, which is what I thought had been done. So
Okay, I mean,
I was like, well, this is something that got.
yeah, I mean, this is definitely something that got left behind, and I'm quite disappointed by it, but I'm happy it'll be back. So
Okay.
Can all come
I don't
back.
know who dropped the ball on it, but quite disappointed, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Alder Moore, did you have something to say?
Well, I was just thinking that, you know, I was reminded of my college days where as a college administrator where people said, you know, if you're going to make a big alcohol policy on campus, you better be prepared to enforce it. And so, and I certainly don't want our police department to be running around enforcing this no smoking ban. I mean, I think they have much better things to do with their time. So I guess I think the posting piece makes more sense. If we were going to do something, it makes more sense because it would give the discretion to the director to put up in those closed spaces, Chad, that you were just referring to, in park shelters or whatever, or in playground areas, as opposed to anybody walking in a park. But obviously, as Andrew just pointed out, it seems like it slipped through the cracks. So if...
And just for a little clarification, so that was September 13th, it would have been in 2016. The Parks Board voted to do no smoking ordinance in all city parks, with exception for exclusive park use events, such as community festival and others.
So there is an ordinance that you voted on?
So the Parks Board voted on it, yeah. And then it went forward, and that was a part of the codification process.
So there should have been marked up pages that came back here when we reviewed them all, and that should have been passed along to the codifiers, so.
Should have been, yeah.
Yeah, so somewhere between your board and the codifiers.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly where it went to, but as you'll find in this code book, there's 600 some pages, and it is very easy to lose track of things, so it's always a work in progress, I think, until the end of time. I'm pretty convinced of that, so.
Well, it sounds like maybe we should check with Jake and see if he still has those copies of those pages. Maybe Park Board would like to take a look at it again, just to see if they are going to restrict it in certain places, kind of set up a little process for what those places might be.
Yep, it'll be back.
Okay.
It'll be back.
All right.
We'll be waiting for it.
Okay. Anything else before we vote on and say goodbye to the code book for a while?
Oh, my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
Everyone in favor of approving the code book with the 4 pieces of the Plan Commission, the 4 changes which we voted on, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. We're done with that for a while. Next item, G1C, consideration of ordinance 10-17-691 concerning fire and EMS fees. This is the fire chief.
Good evening. Back to the code book.
No.
Please
go.
This is an ordinance to basically allow us to charge when we're requested to stand by for a event within the city, similar to the Monona, the 20K Lake Monona run, or the chocolate run, any of those type of events that request an ambulance or an engine to stand by for the event. Currently, we don't have the ability to charge for it, so we don't offer that. This would give us that chance. So.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I should have asked for a motion to approve this.
Move approval.
Second.
Is there a second? Does anyone have any questions for Chief Sullivan? Comments?
So
Alder Holmquist?
I got ahead of myself. If there's any reason why we wouldn't take this, oh, never mind. I'm getting tired. We're good.
It's been a long night,
Yep.
yeah.
It's second reading.
Yeah.
I was trying to save you a
else?
trip, but.
Nope, I thank you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item G1D, consideration of ordinance 9-17-690, adopting a new schedule of fees, fines, and penalties. Aaron, passing this out.
This is a cleaned up,
City
see the cleaned up
administrator.
copy. There was just a few spots that, again, every time you look at it, you see something new that had a couple question marks, and language was a little bit fuzzy. Again, the new code book, which you just adopted, most specific fee and fine amounts have been removed, and so now we're going to refer to this fee and fine schedule. And the copy I just passed out, there was just a couple of little cleanup items. I don't think they were anything substantial, mostly just removing things that we didn't really need after all. But we did find in the course of actually reviewing this, there is a chapter, Peace and Good Order, and also chapter 272, which I forget which one that is, where we adopt a few state statutes by reference, and there was a couple of missing statutes that didn't get carried over. I'm not sure what happened, if that was just a codifier mistake, but they were missing, so right after we finish this, we'll bring up what we'll call a cleanup ordinance to put those back in. So we're not sure where those couple went to, but if you look at chapter 335, there's a big long list of state statutes adopted, and for whatever reason, a couple got missed, so we don't know where they went. Codifier stole them, I think.
Anyone have any questions? Alder Spade? Yep.
So I'm just reading in 272 on, I'm not sure what page it is. I think they're chronological. At the top of the page in the 272s, with respect to fines for alcohol in public places, and I'm just curious if this creates a ambiguity or conflict with respect to public parks, because, correct me if I'm wrong, oddly enough, you can take alcohol to a public park here and consume it. This seems to suggest that you could be fined in these public areas for possession of alcohol. Am I wrong about that? Or
It's only where prohibited. Keep in mind, this is just the fee schedule. This isn't the law. The law is in the code you passed.
Got it.
This just sets the fines for it. So it would only be in areas where the code prohibits drinking in public places.
Okay.
Anything else? All in favor of approving the fee schedule, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now we're going to move on to new business. Item 2B, consideration of Resolution 17-10-2222, amending the 2017 capital budget for Wildhaven Park Design and Engineering, put forth by the Parks and Recreation Director. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Second.
City Administrator Little, were you going to, or Alder Kitzler, were you going to explain this, or whoever would like to?
She can give a crack
You
at
want
it.
to?
and then
Sure. Essentially, the request is to apply some funds that were unused this year for the Ahuska Park Tennis Court crack filling project in the amount of $9,960, and apply that towards Wild Haven Park design costs. I'm having a hard time saying that tonight. Wild Haven Park design, engineering, and construction is actually in the now adopted 2018 capital budget. This would allow that design work to get a jump start in 2017 so that we can bid earlier in 2018, and by then, hopefully, we can have some cost savings.
Mark, did you have anything to add to that? Or?
No.
And that's what Jake shared with me, too. so
Okay.
She said it just much better than I would.
This was outside of what was approved in the 2018 budget, so what's in the 18 budget is, this is addition to that, so
Okay.
we're not reducing anything in the 18.
It lists $20,000 for design/engineering,
That's
but
in
we could
construction
always,
engineering.
but we could always borrow less if we don't need it for that project.
Any questions? Here, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up is item 2C, convene in closed session under Wisconsin statute section 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This is dealing with an employee separation agreement, as well as Section 19.851G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. This is a litigation update. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Move to convene in closed session.
Second.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Kitzler.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Sorry. Aye.
Alder Poor.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist. Alder Spade.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Okay, we are in closed session. We are back in open session. They're on, okay. Is there a motion to approve the employee separation agreement with Bob Johnson?
So moved.
We need to take it out of motion first.
Out of order.
Take it out of order.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion.
You're right. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve the agreement?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Reports of committees, commissions, boards, mayor, et cetera. Alder Kerr.
Thursday, the Community Media Committee is meeting. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, so we're getting back at it and going over retreat notes from 2016 to think about new initiatives.
Alder Holmquist.
No report.
Alder Spate.
No report.
Alder Wood.
No report.
Alder Kitzler.
For all those viewing, the library board meeting is moved from tomorrow to next Tuesday, which is October 24th at 7 o'clock here in the library. Otherwise, no report.
Alder Moore. City clerk.
No report, Mayor.
City administrator.
I will be gone October 19th through the 27th, but I will be reluctantly checking my email. If you need me, just let me know. And another thing is just a FYI that the UCY is continuing. Greg Harrington's engineering class, who worked with us this last couple of semesters, is looking at the Broadway corridor with his students between the riverfront and the River Place, looking at the cross sections for travel lanes, bike paths, sidewalks, possibly looking at the banks near the development, and they will come up with 3 alternatives and 1 recommendation, plus construction drawings, and they'd like to present to us at the December 4th City Council meeting. And this is one we had actually proposed to them like a year ago, but they couldn't quite get it together. So we were a tiny bit surprised that not only were they still thinking about it, they were actually already in progress doing it. So that was some good news, because
Awesome.
any improvement to that little section, I think, is only going to be helpful. So, and thanks to Leah and again Joan working on that fee schedule, because that was many days of work again, even to clean it up. So thank you.
City Attorney Cole.
Nothing to report.
Committee of the Whole meets next Wednesday at 5:30 to consider the other half of the operating budget, and we will be providing food. And I think, at least last Mark and I talked, the amendments for operating will be due to him by November 1st. So, there is one appointment, Elizabeth Pilioris, second alternate, Zoning Board of Appeals, effective immediately through May 2020. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Abstaining from this vote?
You're abstaining? Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
I can kind of ask a question before we
Sure.
call the vote. So I know this is going to come up in one of my committees regarding an appointment and the potential future process, and this is effective immediately. Is there a reason this would need to be done now?
We have a
versus-
meeting on Thursday night.
Or did someone resign?
Yes. We've been short. I mean, we've been down members on that board. So
And
we
this
have
is a-
we have quorum we had a
Right.
quorum problem already this summer.
Constant quorum
I'm,
problems.
I'm sorry, which one was this
For
for?
zoning board of appeals.
We had an alternate that was John Griffith, who was our code inspector, so there was conflict of interest there.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.